I'm so glad you're still here. About a year ago, I created a song video where I teased the Volca Keys' secret ability to create note sequences up to 8 measures long per memory slot. Today, I'm finally ready to show you how you can create your own long sequences and really expand on the utility of your Volca Keys as part of your performance rig. But first, allow me to take you on a journey back in time to the moment when I first discovered this hidden feature. Hello? Thought I was hearing reverb, like we were going for a legitimate flashback for a second there. The moment when I first discovered this hidden feature. I was sitting at my kitchen table one evening playing my Volca Keys. I was right, it's a flashback. Okay, here we go, it's gonna be fun.
I'm really enjoying my Volca Keys from Korg. And I also love that in flux mode, I can sequence notes off the beat. But it also makes me wonder, how many notes can you play in between each step of the sequencer? Is there even a limit? I know from reading the manual that if I boot into setup mode, I can set the tempo range to full. Then I could slow it down all the way to 10 beats per minute. That's slow enough that I could just record a bunch of random notes into the sequencer in flux mode. And then when I play it back, I can count how many notes are in each step.
So I did just that.
Okay, let me try it.
And soon I had my answer.
Wow! Korg made this thing able to record 8 notes per step. That's 8 measures of 16th notes. Now I wonder if I could do that with Midi.
Just like I remember it. So young and full of enthusiasm. Well, now that you know the origin story, it's time to learn what happened next, so that you can begin to create your own super long sequences on the Korg Volca Keys. Let's begin. As you've already seen, the flux mode actually allows each step of the sequencer to be divided into 8 more divisions. And in poly mode, you can still have 3 simultaneous notes, so you can create some very musical sequences. For example, with 3-note polyphony, you can have a bass part at the bottom, a rhythmic arpeggio in the middle, and a melody up top. But to get this kind of music into the Volca Keys, one does not simply play it with the built-in keyboard. It would be impossible to get acceptable results. No, you are going to need an external Midi sequencer to pull this off. This could be a digital audio workstation, or DAW for short, notation software with Midi out, or a workstation keyboard. For the sake of simplicity, I'll just use the word DAW going forward to refer to any external sequencer. Here's a quick overview of the process. First, make sure your DAW is capable of Midi output and Midi clock. Second, create your sequence. Third, connect your sequencer's Midi out to the Volca Keys Midi in and make some important settings on the Volca Keys to get it ready to receive the sequence. Next, play the sequence from the DAW while recording on the Volca Keys. This part can be tricky, so be sure to follow the tutorial step by step, and also be ready to do your own patient troubleshooting if your results vary from mine. And finally, save to a memory slot, set the Volca Keys to 1/4 playback speed, and rock out. Before you begin, it might be helpful to set the Volca Keys Midi channel and all other global parameters to factory defaults. If you need to, you can pause the video and follow this section of the manual to get ready. Okay, at 8 notes per step, you can fit a total of 128 notes into what the Volca Keys thinks is just 1 measure long. So, as you build and preview your sequence in your DAW, you have a few options. For one, you can sequence your song inside of 1 measure on a 128th note grid and slow down your host tempo to preview as you go. I'm using PreSonus Studio One, which doesn't allow for a 128th note grid, but it does have an option to time stretch MIDI notes. So, as in my case, you can build a regular 8-bar sequence at a nominal tempo, and then shrink it down to half its original size to fit 4 measures in length, again to fit 2 measures in length, and a final time to fit 1 measure in length. If you still can't do that, stay tuned and I'll provide some other options later on. Long notes, short notes, low notes, high notes, and don't forget to add a few missing notes. Get creative and build something fun. Okay, now that you've got your sequence written and fitting into a single measure, you're ready to send your sweet creation to the Volca Keys. Set up your DAW as needed to output MIDI through an available hardware output, and enable that output to send MIDI clock and use MIDI clock start. These options make it possible to automatically synchronize the Volca Keys with your host, so that all your notes are recorded exactly where you wanted them. Now set your MIDI track to use that hardware output, and plug in a MIDI cable from the hardware output of your DAW to the input of the Volca Keys. Set up the Volca Keys with the following function key combinations. Function and clear all will clear the sequence in the current memory slot. Function and motion sequence clear will clear the motion sequence. Function and 1-to-1 tempo will sequence playback to normal speed. And the last and most important setting, function and flux, will enable the recording and playback of multiple notes per step in the Volca Keys built-in sequencer. In your DAW, set your tempo to something reasonable. I've had success with anything 120 beats per minute or slower. Move your sequence of notes to begin at least 1 measure after playback begins. This will give the Volca Keys an opportunity to play through a complete cycle to get fully synchronized with the DAW before the cascade of notes start to pour in. Also, make sure there are no note events immediately after the sequence and that you don't have looping enabled on the timeline. Place the playback cursor exactly 1 measure before the note sequence. I can tell you're getting excited about this next part, so here we go. On the Volca Keys, press the record button once to prepare it to record. When you start playback from the DAW, it should automatically start transport on the Volca Keys. Cycle through 1 empty measure, and then record all of the incoming notes. Here goes nothing. Now, stop playback on the DAW, and the Volca's transport should also stop. On the Volca Keys, press Function and 1/4 tempo, adjust your tempo knob as needed, and press play to review your sequence and make sure it recorded properly synchronized. If it didn't, clear all, set back to 1-to-1 tempo, and try again. If it still doesn't work, with patience, you will be able to figure out what is unique about your setup so that you can successfully make your own long sequences. Now, if your DAW is limited to a grid of 64th notes or 32nd notes, and you can't time stretch MIDI notes to squeeze down to a single measure, you can still make it work by setting the Volca Keys tempo division to 1/2 or 1/4, respectively, when recording the MIDI sequence. If your sequence uses 64th notes and is 2 measures long in the DAW timeline, be sure to begin playback with 2 measures of silence before it begins. And if 32nd notes and 4 measures long, begin playback with 4 measures of silence before the sequence. Again, that is to let the Volca Keys internal sequencer cycle through 1 complete time and then begin recording your notes right on beat 1. As you find success with your transfers, don't forget to save each one to a memory slot. If you want to slow down playback further, you can reboot the Volca Keys into the Global Parameters menu by holding down the Function key and then light LED number 5 and press the Record button to extend the range of the internal tempo all the way down from 10 to 600 beats per minute. And here's a tip for mapping out a complete song over multiple memory slots. You can use a memory slot for an 8-bar intro, but also have the same slot for a 4-bar turnaround between a chorus and a second verse. How? Set the active steps of the sequence to play steps 9 through 16, and then resave the memory. Before you play it as an intro, activate all steps. But whenever you recall the same memory later, it will remember to activate only steps 9 through 16. Smart! Whew! These little boxes are more than meets the eye, and that's why we love them so much. They challenge us to be curious, so that we'll go beyond the presets and really unlock their hidden potential. And I know it may have taken me a while to create this tutorial for you, but believe me when I tell you that I've wanted to show you this trick since the moment I discovered it.
In the future, I want to show this to all my good friends on YouTube, like Trucker and Sir M and Francisco Ojeda and Rob Jeffries and Micro Grampy and Shuttle and Dub Cousteau and Lorenzo Schmitz and the Terrible